Hello and welcome to another episode of No Strings Attached with Dr. Mark Goulston. I'm your co-host and executive producer, Ken Sky. Like always, we're currently streaming this live on LinkedIn, which means we'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. You can let us know what you think, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them as well. It is my honor to introduce our special guest today. He is one of the most sought-after speakers in the world and is considered a major innovative voice in the areas of leadership development, organizational development, and change management. He is certified as an executive and organizational coach and is also certified as a master somatic coach. He is an active member of the Transformational Leadership Council, an international group of transformational CEOs, thought leaders, writers, humanitarians, film producers, and educators, and is also a founding member of the Business Alliance for the Future. In 2012, he was formally invested as the Knight of the Sovereign Order of St. John's of Jerusalem's Knights of Malta, the world's oldest humanitarian organization. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited to welcome today on No Strings Attached, Mr. Blaine Bartlett. But for now, without any further ado, please welcome our host, Dr. Mark Goulston.
Thank you, Ken. And a big thank you to Ken because he's got me set up with these great cameras. I had to put makeup on. My skin looks crappy, but it looks okay today. So Ken, a shout out to Ken for being a master of many skills. And I am excited to have Blaine here. As you possibly know, I reach out to people and meet people who are up to good. They're up to all good, and they're doing battle with the people who are up to no good. And I discover people like Blaine who have what I call this hidden in plain sight wisdom. They share these gems that after you listen to them, sometimes your jaw drops and you think, I never would have thought of that. I can use that today. And that's what we're offering to you in No Strings Attached. We bring on special guests like Blaine, who can share a little bit of their wisdom, maybe a little bit of their humor, and we're all going to walk away with things that we can use today to make our lives better, more successful, and more meaningful. So Blaine, thank you for being here.
Mark, it's absolutely my pleasure. And I want to echo what you said about Ken. The setting and just the work of Ken. I've done a lot of shows on the StreamYard platform, and this is really well done, really well done. So, like you said, a shout out to Ken. Good job.
Thank you. So Blaine, it's good to see you. For viewers, I had the pleasure of having Blaine on my podcast, and I got a whole close to an hour of him, but today we're just going to steal some of his gems that he's going to share with us. So what comes to mind when you think of certain things that you've learned, certain things that you have taken action on, maybe even things that kind of twisted your head around and you entered the world differently? Can you share some of those, Blaine?
Probably the most seminal one would be the death of my wife about 11 years ago. And we'd been together 20 plus years, and it was a wake-up call in so many ways. I mean, first of all, it was kind of an existential wake-up call in the sense that she and I really become very interdependent with each other, and so my identity was in play. Who am I? It was Pam and Blaine, or Blaine and Pam, and now it's Blaine. What does that mean? So and where I'm going with this is I was encouraged through the grieving process to just begin to think about moving on. At some point you're going to have to move on. And that never felt right to me because moving on had a connotation to it about leaving some things behind, and there was so much I didn't want to leave behind. So I started playing with, linguistically, with just, meaning of things. And where I landed was, I'm not going to be moving on, I'll be moving forward. Now, it seems like a very small little shift, but moving forward gave me permission to carry things with me. Moving on meant I was leaving things behind. moving forward. So, I think for me, small things like that can make enormous differences. And most people, in my experience, don't take the time to actually think about why they're compelled to do some things or why they're compelled to stay where they are. And a lot of it has to do with language. And I say language in the inner conversation. How I describe something determines how I feel about it. How I feel about it generates my behavior. And I wanted to move, but I was stuck. So I needed to change the description of the circumstance. So something as simple as just changing my description, how I'm defining it, how I'm describing it, it's not important what I'm looking at, it's important what I'm seeing. I think that would be one way to think about that. And hats off to Mr. Thoreau for the gem on that one. But that's essentially what it is.
You're reminding me of there's a metaphor I sometimes use, which are the cut rings of an old tree. I remember when I used to walk through Muir Woods up near San Francisco, you'd see some trees that were hundreds of years old, and each of those rings is a year in the tree's life, and it would tell you the character of the tree. It would tell you that one year there was a fire, one year there was a flood, but each year the tree moved on. It didn't forget the rings below. Mm-hmm. It learned from them. And in fact, when you saw those trees and the character of them and the tree moving forward, it looked much different than a synthetic tree in which everything is totally perfect. And I love that distinction between moving on, which would mean disregarding the tree, or moving forward, which means building upon what you've learned. Can you dig into that a little bit more and give some examples so people viewing can put it into action in their lives?
Well, I think this last year has certainly been rife with examples of that. Just in some of the work that I do with my clients. We've got a restaurant here up. I live up on near Seattle on an island up there. And when everything closed down, the restaurants on an island are really susceptible to a lot of things. And we'd gotten to know this restaurateur fairly well. And I was just in conversation with him about, first of all, why do you do what you're doing? I know that you're in business to make money. I mean, that's obvious. But why do you do this? Because he was really stressing in the sense of, not so, he's pretty comfortable. I mean, he doesn't need a job and that sort of thing. But he says, I've got my people, and I really care about them. But I'm also, we bring some stuff to this community that nobody else is bringing right now in the sense of a place to be, but also, it's organic food. It's really healthy preparation and that sort of thing. So we just started exploring, and this may seem kind of duh, but we started exploring the idea of, well, can you set up a takeout service? And he said, well, we've never done that. We're not equipped to do that. We're not set up for any of that stuff. And I said, well, yeah, that's probably true right now. And you've got some time, you've got some wiggle room here. Can you play with that a little bit? So just being willing to look at the obstacle and ask, what does it ask me to do? Yeah, and there's some Stoic philosophy in that, in the sense that Marcus Aurelius would say the obstacle is the way. The obstacle wouldn't appear unless I was on the path, whatever the path is towards. But I'm only going to find that obstacle on my path. So working with him to just kind of go, well, okay, take out. Well, it provided enough so that he could keep some of his staff on board. And then there was, the governmental help on that and whatnot. But they are one of the most viable restaurants on the island today. I mean, they're strong. They're in a good place. They've retained staff, and his spirit is really good. I mean, he feels like he accomplished something, not just survived, but he's actually set himself up to feel as if we're thriving here in some very, very harsh situations where we're actually set up to thrive a little bit. And that distinction makes a big difference as well. How can I organize so I can thrive? I've got to move through, survive, but how do I organize to survive, to actually end up thriving? And that kind of goes back to the move on or move forward distinction. A lot of organizations, this is kind of a summation on this, in times of calamity, they're really focused on how do I survive? And as a consequence of that, cost cutting comes into play. We start pruning things and we start tossing stuff out the window. In difficult times, surviving, obviously, you need to be able to handle that issue, but having the focus be on surviving in order to thrive, that begins to bring into play different decisions. I may actually end up making an investment rather than cutting a cost, because I can see light at the end of the tunnel, and if I can do this well, I'm going to be positioned in a very interesting way. So that, again, that kind of that linguistic distinction between surviving and thriving.
Yeah, I love that distinction, surviving in order to thrive, because I think you're right. A lot of people, they run into a disconnect, and it's just, how can I survive? And then of course they're going to be behind when the light turns green, which it eventually will when the pandemic passes. Mm-hmm. And those who can survive in order to thrive can hit the ground running, as opposed to the other ones who just barely made it through, and then they just have to scratch their heads and they're going to be behind them. Have you ever heard of the Euro step move in the NBA?
The Euro step move? No, I haven't.
The Euro step is a pivot that was made famous by a Spurs player, Manu Ginobili. And what it is that when you're going in for a layup and someone's blocking you, say like the pandemic's blocking us, what happens is just before you get in front of the defender, you take a step to the left or the right and you go around them to complete the layup. So what happens is you refocus your momentum. Whereas if you see this huge person in front of you like a brick wall, you feel like, oh, there's no way to go through. So he's the one who is credited with it. But many players now use this Euro step maneuver. But it sounds like surviving in order to thrive is not hitting the brick wall and falling down. You go to it, but then you see a different way around it, and you pivot to the left or the right. And he pivoted to, let's do takeout. And but I love your distinction between surviving and thriving.
It's just a personal example for me when things hit. My book of business, a lot of my clients are overseas, Europe and Asia, Japan, China, Australia, and with the lockdown, I was not in. I've got a kind of a traditional consulting approach. I actually am on site a lot with clients, and that disappeared. And with that went a large book of business, from a revenue perspective. And so I started looking at that, and with the idea of, well, we need to keep the doors open. We need to pay the bills. We've got stuff going on here. So there were things that I was doing with that, some contracts that I ended up doing, via Zoom, and not unlike anybody else. But I took that time and I said, okay, when this comes out, how do I want to be positioned so that I can actually be doing things in a little bit different way that doesn't require me to be on an airplane quite as much. And so I started playing around with some different notions. I ended up writing a book in 3 months that is actually set up a whole different programmatic pipeline, if you will, for my work, and it's around leadership mindset. So we've got a mastermind developed off of that. We've got a coaching program that we're now developing off of that. But I'm working around right now with the idea of virtual reality as part of an augmentation to some of my delivery methods. And I wouldn't have done any of that had I just focused on, okay, let's just get through this. Let's just pay the bills. I've got to survive here. I wanted to thrive when I came out of this. I really wanted to be heads up and not heads down, and let's just chug it through.
So you're a member of the Transformational Leadership Council, and I love the distinction which you're going to make for us between transformational and transactional.
Transactional is episodic, number one. Transactional is the way that most business is conducted today, and it's a quid pro quo. Yeah. Transformation, when people see butterflies, they talk about the beauty of the butterfly, but they never talk about the process that was required for the butterfly to be what it is. And that's what transformation is. Transformation, there are many transactions that occur in a transformational process, but a lot of it has to do with the nature of surrendering. And I mean surrender not in the sense of giving up anything tangible. It's not about giving up. It's about letting go of attachment. Letting go of attachment to form. Letting go of attachment to what is right now my experience. And it's the letting go of the attachment that allows for transformation to occur and something else to emerge as a consequence of that. And the first arrow never hurts. It's the second arrow that causes the suffering, to bring some Buddhist wisdom into this. And transformation is about not letting that second arrow actually take root. I've been struck. I've been, now, the cocoon moves into the chrysalis, or the caterpillar moves into the chrysalis, and things begin to shift. There are transactions that occur in that process, but it's all in service of letting go towards a future state that I've said is important to me. And I think a large part of transformation has to do with future states. And it's a phase shift, would be one way to think about it. It's not about moving decks around on a Titanic. It's about phase shifting.
Why do you think so many people are afraid to let go of that phase they're in, or maybe they don't trust that there's a phase afterwards? Or what do you help your clients overcome so they can let go and surrender?
Oh, great question. Fear typically is, the attachment is one thing, but particularly in business, a lot of leaders and business owners and business people that I work with, they have attached their identity to their results. I am my results. And part of that is I am the way I work. What got me here, and Marshall Goldsmith talks about this, what got you here won't get you there. Wherever there might be. You may get an iteration of it, but to actually cause a breakthrough, and that's what transformation is actually about for me, is breakthrough, to move completely to a different level that I could only have imagined in my dreams, and I would have no idea about how to achieve it, given my my current experience of skill sets and knowledge and that sort of thing. That breakthrough. So dealing with that fear, the fear of letting go. We used to do things, and I say we, when I was early on in my career, we did a lot of platform training, a lot of human development, personal development work. And one of the metaphors I worked with was, you've gone through life feeding yourself with these peanuts. I'll just use peanuts as an example. And you know these peanuts, you know them very well. You know what they taste like, you know what they feel like. You're very familiar with them. You've always got them in your hand because you always want to be able to go to them for sustenance. And somebody offers you this incredible dinner, filet mignon or lobster, or take your pick, but it's China, fine China, incredible wines, and it's sitting right in front of you. You can see it. You don't even have to imagine it. You can just see it there. The only catch is you've got to let go of the peanuts in order to go. And it's in that letting go piece where at that moment when I've let go, there is nothing here. There is no guarantee that dinner isn't going to be taken away and it's a bad joke. But at that point, I've got nothing. And it's that fear of having nothing. When I'm talking to leaders, one of the questions I'll almost always ask them is, how do you know what to do when you don't know what to do? And that speaks to authenticity. I need to have a place to organize my behavior around. What's the platform that I'm standing on? What's the foundation of my life? And part of that's values. I was talking with a friend the other day, and this might be very useful here in terms of immediacy. I have faith that meal is going to be there. And faith is like GPS. You kind of put that that metaphor together here. When I plug a destination into my GPS system, if you're paying really close attention to it, you're going to get 2 or 3 or 4 routes, and you select the one that you think is best. But all of a sudden, there's something there that crops up and you go, wow, that route is blocked. Well, the GPS will, recalibrate and show you another route. The faith is like that. I have faith that this is going to transpire. I have faith that this will manifest. I don't know how, but the GPS, that faith, will keep me on track. And I can't choose the path. People get confused. They get hamstrung by too quickly going to how. How do I do this? Don't focus on the how. Focus on the what. And then part of that is, for the sake of what do I want that? So that for the sake of what question begins to move my ego out of the way.
I love that. It's triggering something. My philosophy in life, which I've evolved into, is I assume innocence and goodwill until I can't. So wherever I go, whatever audience I'm speaking to, I assume goodwill from them, that they're not there just to see me make a fool of myself so that they can laugh and waste their money watching someone make a fool of themselves. And I assume goodwill and innocence. And what's happened is, when someone acts towards me in a negative or hostile way, I never get angry. I get confused.
Mm-hmm.
I let them act that way. I protect myself physically, but I let them act that way. I pause and then I look at them and I crick my head and I say, what was that about?
Yeah.
And then I assume they have sort of an explanation, but it's surrendering to the world, instead of, oh my God, I have to have some way to deal with every situation, or else I'm doomed.
Yeah. That's I love that, because curiosity is a superpower, I think.
Mm-hmm.
If you can actually understand what it is. Most people approach curiosity as if it's a noun, not as if it's a verb. Are you curious? Well, yeah, I'm curious. I am curious. It's a noun state. Now, well, what does curiosity look like in action? Curiosity in action is lifting the cover up without expectation. It's about exploration. It's about discovery. It's about, tell me more, without needing to have a conclusion predicated before I even start the exploration. And that curiosity can uncover all kinds of things for me. But most people will, they go in with a presupposed idea about what it's supposed to be. I make judgments about what your intention is, and then part of my inquiry becomes just an activity of confirming my assumption. I want to be genuinely curious. Tell me more. God, a metaphor I play with is, we've got about roughly 8 billion people on this planet, and we all live on this same rock. We all have this in common. But in truth, we all live in different worlds. Your world is different than my world. You've organized things, your family of origin, all kinds of different things. So what that implies is, I am continuously dealing with aliens. There are 8 billion aliens on this planet that I get to interact with, none of whom have my world in common with them. Now, we've got language and we've got that sort of stuff. So curiosity gets to be a really important skill set when I start looking at, how do I actually interact with these aliens that I'm continuously encountering? And it takes blame off of the table. It takes judgment off the table. It takes right, wrong off the table. All I'm left with is curiosity. Tell me more. You've got a fascinating world that you live in. How? I want to explore that with you so we can find some common ground. And then
what's fascinating about what you said with curiosity, at least something I find fascinating, is that when you can just be curious and sincerely curious, as opposed to doing a bait and switch on someone in which you're just acting curious but you're not, and people feel your earnest curiosity and they get to open up about it.
Yeah.
People love responding to curiosity. They love being able to express themselves into a receptive listener who's just being curious. And a lot of times we feel like, oh, no, we can't be curious. We have to be determined. We have to be transactional. And I just love what you're saying about everything you've said.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
that kind of goes back to the distinction between transaction and transformation. Curiosity is in the way that it's typically exercised is a transaction. And it's a transaction around, I want to be right about my position. I want to be right about my point of view. So I'm going to have a transactional conversation with you to uncover what will support my position. Transformation is a suspension of that. And it really is a true exploration that it transforms my understanding of what's going on right now. It actually, the word dialogos, exploration of ideas, dialogue. I go around the ideas, and in that exploration, I find new truths, and that's transformative.
Now, someone, tell me if you think this is accurate. Someone described Steve Jobs and Elon Musk by saying, to them, the unknown is an adventure to be curious about and lived, whereas to most people, the unknown is a danger to be avoided. And so Steve Jobs and Elon Musk love the unknown. In fact, someone was telling me one of the reasons they both love drugs and psychedelics is because they can be controlling personalities. And when you're a controlling personality, you're very convergent in the way you're thinking. And they often use drugs to be divergent, because if they were left to their personality, they would converge on everything and control everyone. But they realized they needed to sort of explode into divergent thinking, and psychedelics and drugs, not that I'm advertising it, but I can understand how those can be vehicles that help you in being able to really launch into the unknown and then see what you discover. So does any of that make sense to you?
Oh, Mark, it truly does. Most people tend to organize their lives in a linear fashion, past, present, future. There's a cause-effect correlation, and that's kind of how we grow up. The two examples that you cite, Elon and Jobs, these are dimensional thinkers. They don't think in linear cause-effect sorts of ways. They think dimensionality, and it's in that sense, it's really almost a hologram that they're occupying. Yeah, it's kind of like if this piece here got expanded in a funky way, what might be the ripple? And so they start playing with that, and it's dimensionality. It's dimensional thinking, not linear thinking.
That's wonderful. I went on a walk yesterday, and I didn't know this story about how Elon Musk came up with the idea for Tesla. Apparently, he was speaking to someone years ago, and they were looking at a laptop, and this other friend said, this laptop runs on lithium batteries. It's not like alkaline. I mean, these lithium batteries, you can recharge them. They last a while. And together they said, I'll bet someday a car could run on that. And not only a car, let's make it a supercar. Let's not make it like a little smart car that you can, that's really teeny. Let's make a luxury car that can run on batteries. And that was the beginning of that dimensionality of what became Tesla. So it's so much what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example of that. I hadn't heard that story. And most people, when they hear, lithium battery in a computer, they go, well, what other computer could I make?
Right.
That's linear thinking. Yeah. They kind of, blow this up, see what else is there.
Well, you've been a joy, and I know to our viewers, he's speaking to us from the wine cellar of a Ritz-Carlton. So shout out to the Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah.
Here you go. Improve your lighting, because you never know who's going to do an interview in your wine cellar, Ritz-Carlton.
Exactly.
And just want to thank you for being on. And you certainly shared gems that I'm going to think about, and you shared with the generosity of the spirit that I know you have. And so thank you for being on.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I love these conversations, Mark, and I look forward to sitting down with you with a cup of coffee.
We're going to do that. So, Ken, can you take us home? And what are some of the things that you took away from this?
Well, thank you, Mark. And thank you, Blaine. That was just so lovely to listen to both of you. I always feel like this fly on the wall that gets to listen into the brilliant minds of the world having a conversation. So it is really amazing for me to be here. So I learned something about curiosity. And it typically seems to be handled transactionally, but we should instead Look at it as an action of discovery and exploration. What I also loved was how we respond to curiosity in email. You mentioned that, Dr. Mark. And most importantly, the butterflies. A lot of people look at the butterflies and how beautiful they can fly through the screen. But we sometimes forget, what did it take? All the struggles to get to that point. So we'll let those
very clever.
So
you're good.
And actually, you really resonated with a lot of people on LinkedIn as well. We had a lot of comments that I blended in here. I hope that you got to see some of them. If not, you'll see them afterwards. But we have here Damien, who said, "Thank you both." And me as well. I didn't see that even there. My pleasure. And also it says, "Can you talk about social media and mental health? Are people looking for recognition?" Is that something that we could quickly address, or are we running out of time here?
Well, I'll take a stab at it, but do you want to take a stab at it, my guest, Blaine?
Well, I think that there's a very interesting correlation between social media and poor mental health. So all of the focus on likes, I mean, all of this stuff and getting followers, for me, it takes the focus away from where it actually could be most productive, which is on what do I bring to the world? What's the gift that I have that's unique for me to bring to the world? And if I'm consumed with, do I have a lot of followers? I start doing things to curry more followers, and it starts to move me away from who I am. And this is where the mental health piece comes in. And if I keep doing that, then I lose connection with my soul. I lose connection with who I am, and then I got a problem, and it's not a pretty one. There's a loss of meaning, loss of purpose.
Yeah. So this really hit me on my soapbox, which I'm going to speak from. I think what's happened is social media, it certainly has some pluses, but it's addicted the world to adrenaline over something called oxytocin.
Yes.
And what happens is, if you think of the technologists who created, if you think of Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Bezos, Zuckerberg, and they've done amazing things, but I don't think they have a lot of oxytocin running through their body, because oxytocin's responsible for intimacy. And here's my minor complaint. Years ago, and we all love something called dopamine, which is pleasure. Years ago, you could feed dopamine not only with adrenaline, which is excitement, but you could feed it with oxytocin, which was intimacy and closeness. But what's happened is, in our rush world, and I don't mean this politically, but adrenaline has trumped oxytocin.
Yeah.
And what happens is people are looking for recognition, which is an adrenaline rush as opposed to closeness. Mm-hmm. And I see too often that people, it takes too much time to get close to someone. It takes too much time to let go of your agenda. It certainly takes too much time to care about people's feelings. And that's something that I'm going to fight that battle, even though it's a losing battle, as long as I live, because I think a world that has lost its capacity for closeness and intimacy is a dangerous world. And yes, social media has done amazing things, but there's a downside. So I apologize for using it for my soapbox, but I couldn't resist.
Mark, I couldn't agree with you more. That's one of the reasons that I was compelled to write my one of my books, Compassionate Capitalism. It was that lack of connection that was creating some of the stuff that we have on the economic stage today. The wealth disparity, gender inequality, all of that stuff. Lack of intimacy with stakeholders writ large, lack of intimacy with the environment. So business has a responsibility to correct that. And I say responsibility because they are the most pervasive force on the planet today. Business decisions make a difference, and not just at a pocketbook level, at a living level. And if we model intimacy as a business leader, we're going to have intimacy in our societies.
Absolutely true. Years ago, I wrote a blog called Global Warming, Maternal Cooling, and Childhood Obesity. And what I said is that, and this is not to bash women, what's happened is the warmth and patience of women has gone away because they've become project managers. And many times they get cooperation from nobody, not from their kids, not from their spouses, not from their job. And what's happened is a lot of children want that patience and warmth.
Yeah.
And when they don't get that patience and warmth, they conspicuously consume food. Well, I won't get the warmth, I'll just eat a lot. And so there's a cycle, I believe, that with intimacy removed from the world, there's a push, I think, to conspicuous consumption to try to make up for it. And conspicuous consumption can lead to global warming. And I know that's what we call over ideation. That's what people would say, Mark. That's a little bit too far, but I'm sticking with it.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah, I'm going to be in your camp on that one.
Thank you. Well, thank you all. So thank you. And Ken, any closing things? And otherwise, we'll close it up until another episode.
I'd just like to say thank you to all the people who participated in the comments. It really is lovely to see that the things that we share here resonates with you. And a very special thank you to you, Blaine. It was so lovely to meet you and to listen to you. And with that, I hope to see you all soon.
Thank you.